Episode 1 starts off with Maomao's father asking her to deliver medicine to the verdigris house. Reaching the verdigris house, Maomao tries to clean a wound from one of her drug experiments. Meanwhile, Pairin, a famous princess from the house, greets her. Maomao's grandmother asks if she wants to become a courtesan, which Maomao doesn't want at all. This happens every day, and Maomao is tired of it. While playing in the garden, Maomao gets kidnapped by 3 men. Meanwhile, Lady Lihua gives birth to the nation's prince. 3 months pass, and Maomao worries about her father. She thinks she was ransomed or sold off after being kidnapped and misses her old life as an apothecary. She talks about the rear palace, where women have the emperor's children, and no men are allowed. Maomao says only the emperor, his family, and eunuchs can enter the rear palace, which has 2,000 concubines and servants, and 1,000 eunuchs. The servant girls are treated as disposable. After helping her co-worker Xiaolan, Maomao continues explaining the rear palace life, mentioning that most servants are illiterate and only taught basic etiquette, not reading or writing. Despite her status, Maomao would rather work in the lower class, get paid, and leave in 2 years than aim for a higher palace rank. The scene shifts to Lady Lihua and her child, who look ill. Master Jinshi and another man discuss her condition and notice another woman's child is also unwell. Jinshi tells her that the physician might be too busy to help her daughter, Xiaoling. While some servants gossip about the illness, Xiaolan and Maomao talk about a rear palace curse. Xiaolan says all 3 of the emperor's children have died from illnesses. The doctor confirmed that Lady Gyokuyu and Lihua are very ill, supporting the curse rumor. Lihua, being the emperor's current consort, is very important, but there's a rumor that the emperor likes Gyokuyu more. Maomao senses a power struggle and thinks about Lihua's illness. Even though she doesn't want to get involved, something pushes her to look into it. Maomao sees Lihua and Gyokuyu confronting each other publicly and wonders why the doctor hasn't found a cure. She thinks she knows the answer, but doesn't know how to tell Lihua and Gyokuyu. Sadly, Lihua's son dies. A month later, Jinshi visits Gyokuyu, who tells him she found a note on a rhododendron plant saying it was poisonous to babies. She asks Jinshi to find out who sent the note. Jinshi suspects Maomao after meeting her during the confrontation. A man tells Maomao she must report to the matron of the servant women with other servant girls. Jinshi, the palace's manager, introduces himself. All the girls, except Maomao, are charmed by his looks. Jinshi asks the other girls to leave except Maomao, realizing she is the only servant who can read. Jinshi takes Maomao to Gyokuyu's room, where she thanks Maomao for saving Xiaoling's life with the note. Maomao says it might be a mistake, but Jinshi shows the note and says the fabric is from a servant girl's clothes. Jinshi asks why Maomao put the flower on the windowsill. Maomao explains that the high-end powder the courtesans used contained poison, causing Gyokuyu, Lihua, and their children's illnesses. Maomao says she used to be an apothecary and knows about these things. Gyokuyu presents Jinshi with a specific powder the nurse used for her child and says she tried to warn Lihua, but Lihua ignored her. Gyokuyu makes Maomao her new lady-in-waiting, but Maomao panics because she wants to stay unnoticed. The episode ends with 2 soldiers getting poisoned. Episode 2 picks up with soldiers collapsing from poison in their food. Gaoshun informs Jinshi that the village leader is in custody for possibly helping the barbarians. They talk about Gyokuyu and Maomao's working relationship. Jinshi confirms that Gyokuyu has 4 female servants, while Lihua has over 10, but Gyokuyu is wiser and more cautious. Jinshi decides to keep an eye on Maomao to ensure she doesn't use her apothecary skills for bad purposes. The next day, Jinshi tries to charm Maomao and asks her to serve Gyokuyu well. Maomao meets Hongniang, Gyokuyu's head lady-in-waiting, who shows her around the Jade Pavilion. She meets the other ladies-in-waiting, Yinghua, Guiyuan, and Ailan. They explain that Gyokuyu doesn't have servant girls and relies on her ladies-in-waiting for tasks. Maomao offers to help, but is told to go to her room as Gyokuyu has a special task for her. The girls gossip about Maomao's arm wound while Maomao ponders in her room. Jinshi tells Maomao she's tasked with tasting poison, as the previous tester often got poisoned and Gyokuyu has been poisoned a few times. Maomao, who experimented with toxic chemicals at home and grew immune to poison, enjoys the task, baffling Jinshi and the others. She suggests using silver plates, which react to poison. Hongniang says Maomao should have mentioned her apothecary skills earlier, as she would have been paid more. Maomao explains she kept her skills secret to prevent her kidnappers from profiting. Maomao receives her payment for the day, almost equal to her regular salary, and notes that the money won't go to her kidnappers. She performs more poison testing duties, but starts to grow bored. Jinshi asks her to test some buns, which she says are safe, but Jinshi doesn't want to eat them. Jinshi tells Maomao about the poisoned soldiers and the village leader. Maomao asks about the location and utensils used, theorizing that the firewood might have been poisoned. Jinshi then asks Maomao if she can make an aphrodisiac. Excited, Maomao agrees and goes to the palace's doctor and Gaoshun, Jinshi's assistant. In the room provided, she notices they supplied less cacao than expected, but completes the task after receiving more ingredients. She also makes some brownies with the aphrodisiac and stores them secretly. When she returns, Hongniang scolds her because another lady-in-waiting ate the brownies and experienced side effects. Maomao presents the aphrodisiac and other drugs to Gyokuyu, and Jinshi tensely praises her effort. The episode ends with a mysterious man watching a woman from a distance. Episode 3 starts with Yinghua, Guiwan, and Ailan cleaning and talking about their time at the palace. One of them checks on Maomao and mentions a rumor about a mysterious spirit haunting the rear palace. Maomao meets Xiaolan to discuss this rumor, and while considering if it's real or just a ghost story, they decide it's just a tale and nothing to worry about. Maomao visits the rear palace's doctor and notes that he treats her well despite their past tension. Jinshi interrupts her meal, and Maomao wonders why he keeps bothering her. She suspects Jinshi has a higher position at the palace because he's always around. Jinshi asks Maomao if there's a cure for sleepwalking other than medicine. Maomao promises to investigate the spirit issue. Gaoshun escorts Maomao and asks her to stop looking down on Jinshi. He introduces her to concubine Fuyu, who is to be given to a military officer as a reward. The doctor tells Maomao that Fuyu, a skilled dancer, stumbled during her first performance, causing the emperor to lose interest in her. This led to her sleepwalking due to the shock of being treated as a reward. Maomao and Gaoshun spy on Fuyu. Maomao compares Fuyu to a cotton rose, which changes states. She asks Xiaolan for more details about the spirit story. Xiaolan mentions Fuyu appearing from the north side, leading Maomao to form a theory. Maomao discusses with Gyokuyu how Fuyu's sleepwalking might be related to a case she remembers from a brothel. She concludes that Fuyu needs help to cancel the exchange deal to solve her sleepwalking problem. Maomao explains that Fuyu was ordered to stay in her room to be watched by eunuchs. A few days later, Gyokuyu notices something wrong with Maomao. As Maomao watches Fuyu leave the rear palace, Gyokuyu confronts her about her worries. Maomao is concerned about Fuyu's fate with the emperor and her beloved military officer. Maomao and Gyokuyu watch as Fuyu reunites with the officer and leaves. Maomao wonders what kind of medicine she'd love to make as someone approaches Gyokuyu in her quarters. The episode ends with the man telling Gyokuyu he has a request for Maomao. Episode 4 begins with Lihua's female entourage scolding Maomao for bringing low-class food. Maomao reflects on why she's with these women in the first place. After doing poison checks for the emperor, he tasks Maomao with looking after Lihua. Maomao is surprised that Lihua's staff treats her poorly despite her serving under imperial orders. She discusses her task with Xiaolan, who assumes Lihua is still suffering from the poison. Maomao visits the kitchen to help Lihua's cooks prepare a dietary meal to expel the poison from Lihua's body. However, Lihua's servants keep rejecting her meals, deeming them inadequate. Maomao believes the meals they prefer are too heavy for Li Hua's weakened stomach. Jinshi notices Maomao's struggles and persuades Li Hua's servants to let Maomao assist with Li Hua's health issues. Maomao notices something off about Li Hua's makeup and slaps one of her servants for their foolish actions. She pours the makeup the servant used on Li Hua onto the servant, reminding her that the makeup is poison and shouldn't be used on Li Hua. Maomao orders the servant to wash her face and the others to clean up the mess. While treating Li Hua and guiding her ladies-in-waiting, Maomao confirms that the woman who hid the powder was put in confinement, and the eunuch who recovered the powder was punished. Li Hua asks Maomao why she won't let her die, and Maomao responds that Li Hua could simply stop eating, but knows she continues because she wants to live. Suddenly, the confined lady-in-waiting tells Maomao she's allowed to serve Li Hua again, promising not to make the same mistake. After 2 months, Li Hua recovers enough to walk again. Before Maomao leaves, Li Hua asks if she can give birth to children again. Maomao says she can try, but can't guarantee it. Li Hua realizes the emperor favors Gyokuyu more, but Maomao believes Li Hua still has a chance. Maomao whispers to Li Hua, suggesting she use her charm to seduce the emperor. The episode ends with someone from the royal palace suffering from a curse. Episode 5 begins with Jinshi sparring with a man named Basen. The next day, Jinshi reflects on the situation involving Lady Li Hua's lady-in-waiting and Maomao. Meanwhile, Maomao finds a special ingredient she has been searching for. Before using it, she visits Xiaolan and shares a meal with her. After gossiping about a rumor, Maomao visits the palace doctor and shows him a mushroom she found. Together, they make a meal out of it. Suddenly, a palace attendant rushes in, informing the doctor about a curse that has spread to his hands. Maomao examines the man's wound and thinks it's a strange rash. The doctor asks Maomao to make an ointment for the man. While preparing the ointment, the man explains how the issue started. Maomao suspects it's related to fireworks and says her ointment should help. Jinshi arrives and asks Maomao to follow him to discuss more about the rash. After helping Jinshi, Maomao leaves, but he asks her to make some mushroom stew for him, like the one she had with the doctor. Alone, Maomao ponders the colored wood tablets linked to the rash outbreaks in the palace, wondering if it's code-related. Maomao returns to Gyokyu's residence, where her lady-in-waiting friends give her a dress for the upcoming garden party. They explain that 2 other concubines, Li Shu and Ah Duo, will also attend. Gyokyu tells Maomao that while everyone must comply with the emperor's demands, they can do as they please at the party. Maomao heads to her office to create things for the festivities. Hongniang enters her quarters, and Maomao shows her an underrobe that will help her stay warm at the party. Hongniang asks Maomao to make one for everyone, and Maomao agrees. Meanwhile, someone informs Jinshi that they haven't found any solutions for those suffering from the rash. Jinshi meets with the other concubines before speaking with Gyokyu. He notices Maomao's freckles are gone and admires her new look. Maomao reveals she always wore makeup to make herself look uglier to avoid trouble with sexual deviants. Jinshi apologizes for not helping her with her kidnappers, but Maomao says it's okay. Jinshi gives Maomao his hairpin, and she asks the girls and Gyokyu what does it mean when a man does this. The party officially begins, and the episode ends with a glimpse of a woman in the dark. Episode 6 begins with Maomao and Xiaolan observing the garden party festivities from behind a curtain. Xiaolan points out the Empress Dowager and tells Maomao that she is the mother of the emperor and his sickly brother, who couldn't attend the party. Later, Maomao and Xiaolan come across an argument between the ladies-in-waiting of Gyokyu and Li Hua. Maomao intervenes and stops the fight by reminding one of Li Hua's ladies of an incident between them. She then notices another conflict between the ladies-in-waiting of Ah Duo and Li Shu. Maomao learns that Ah Duo is the longest-serving concubine, while Li Shu is a young newcomer. She finds out they have a mother-daughter-in-law relationship. After receiving an item from a man named Li Haku, Maomao reunites with Li Hua and her ladies-in-waiting. Li Hua gives Maomao a hairpin and leaves. Gyokyu's ladies-in-waiting are surprised by the number of gifts Maomao has received and wonder how Gyokyu will react. Maomao then goes to the main event area of the party, observing her surroundings and the attendees. She participates in a taste-testing activity and notices another tester struggling. Maomao concludes that the dish is safe and moves on to try a soup dish. Upon tasting it, she realizes it is poisoned and quickly leaves. The men at the party are alarmed by this and warn everyone. Jinshi arrives and learns that a minister drank the poisoned soup and collapsed. He finds Maomao and insists on taking her to the infirmary. Maomao assures him that she's fine and expresses regret that she couldn't swallow the poison. Jinshi tells her that someone drank the soup to verify her claim and collapsed. Maomao produces a bag of emetic agents, suggesting the minister should use them. After purging the poison from her own body, Maomao asks Jinshi to bring Lishu to her to discuss the incident. Lishu arrives, and Maomao notices bumps on her arm, deducing that Lishu is allergic to the mackerel served at the party. Maomao realizes that Lishu's dish was swapped with Gyokyu's meal. Lishu's food taster feels guilty for not noticing this sooner. Maomao gives the taster a note for emergencies. Lishu and her taster leave, and Jinshi wonders if the meal swap and poisoning were intentional. The episode closes with Jinshi and his cohort contemplating if this incident is connected to the situation with the wooden tablets. Episode 7 begins with Maomao waking up from a dream about her and her father. She visits Gyokuyu and requests to use the parlor. Gyokuyu agrees and asks Hongniang to escort Maomao to the area. Maomao is presented with the same soup that was sabotaged at the garden party. She investigates the bowl and concludes that 4 people made contact with it. Maomao believes that an outsider who wasn't supposed to touch the dish poisoned it. Maomao suspects that Lishu's taste tester swapped the meal on purpose for harassment, but didn't know it was poisoned. Gaoshan is surprised that a lady-in-waiting would attempt to bully a high-ranking concubine, but Maomao reminds him that this is just an assumption. She believes that Lishu's ladies-in-waiting hold a grudge against her, despite concubines typically having conflicts with each other. Maomao thinks their grudge stems from Lishu becoming the previous emperor's concubine at a young age and now planning to wed her deceased husband's son, which her ladies-in-waiting might find distasteful. Maomao explains that she protected Lishu's food taster the prior day because she understands the demanding lives they lead. Gaoshan relays this information to Jinshi, who believes it's an inside job and wishes he wasn't so tired. The next morning, Maomao talks with Xiaolan about hairpins. Xiaolan tells Maomao that she can leave the rear palace now, explaining that receiving a hairpin grants permission to leave the palace as long as they are escorted by a specific male. Maomao begs Xiaolan to explain further and learns that she can ask someone to remove her from the palace. Someone informs Lihaku that Maomao wants to meet him. Lihaku wonders how to turn Maomao down. When they meet, Maomao hands him a hairpin and asks if she can visit her home. Lihaku is displeased that Maomao is trying to exploit him just to visit her family. Maomao offers Lihaku a chance to attend a flower viewing session at the Verdigris house with 3 highly established princesses named Mei Mei, Joka, and Pyrin. Lihaku accepts Maomao's offer. Jinshi arrives at Gyokuyu's quarters and learns that Maomao left the palace for a 3-day homecoming trip. Lihaku and Maomao arrive at the Verdigris house, where Lihaku leaves with a girl to meet with Perrin. The elderly proprietor asks Maomao why she vanished from the district for months. Maomao gives the proprietor half of her salary for assisting her with Lihaku's dating regimes. The proprietor tells Maomao to visit her father. Maomao spends time catching up with her father and discussing her predicament. The episode closes with Maomao's father puzzled by how she ended up at the rear palace and holding the position she currently has. Episode 8 begins with Maomao observing her father tending to crops in the field. She then encounters a young girl who leads her to a place where several people are severely ill and in need of help. Maomao assists in tending to these injured individuals. After stabilizing them, her female helpers leave to prepare tea, leaving Maomao alone to examine the area for clues about what happened. the young girl returns with the charcoal Maomao requested. Maomao writes something on a text plate and asks the girl to fetch her father. Later, her father arrives with herbs, and they mix them with Maomao's charcoal concoction. Together, they feed the injured people the medicine. The women from earlier help administer the medicine while Maomao and her father discuss theories about the incident. Maomao and her father visit an elderly woman for tea. Maomao contemplates the situation further and spots the young girl outside the women's quarters. She follows the girl and discovers her attempting to murder one of the injured men with a knife. They struggle, and one of the women intervenes, asking Maomao to chat with her. The woman reveals that the injured man was a womanizer and that the young girl's older sister was one of his victims, leading the girl to seek vengeance against him. After discussing the situation, Maomao returns home with her father, acknowledging the dangerous tactics the girl used. At home, Maomao ponders the situation and realizes it was a murder and not a double suicide. Seeking to unwind, Maomao visits a bathhouse and meets Mei. They chat about life, and Maomao returns to the palace with Lihaku the next day. Back at the palace, Maomao notices that Jinshi is infuriated with her. He asks her to meet him in the parlor. Jinshi is upset that Maomao doesn't understand the significance behind hairpins and is frustrated that she chose to go home with Lihaku instead of him. Maomao tells Jinshi that she offered Lihaku a night of blissful dreams, which leads Jinshi to believe they got intimate with each other. Maomao leaves the room, and Hongniang bonks her on the head. The episode ends with Gyokuyu laughing at the situation. Episode 9 begins with Gaoshun urging Jinshi to start working and stop sulking over Maomao. Their conversation is interrupted when a man rushes in, informing them of something terrible happening to Konen. Upon investigating, Jinshi and Gaoshun discover Konen's death and inform Gyokuyu and Maomao the next day. Although Maomao doesn't feel sympathy for Konen, she explains the dangers of excessive alcohol consumption. Jinshi, believing Konen was experienced with alcohol, suspects foul play. He presents Maomao with the alcohol Konen consumed and shares details about the crime scene. In Jinshi's quarters, Gaoshun gives Maomao a full report while Jinshi shows her Konen's broken bottle. After examining it, Maomao deduces that an excessive amount of salt in the drink caused Konen's death, arguing that Konen lost the ability to taste salt due to stress or an imbalanced diet after losing his family. Maomao concludes that someone deliberately added the extra salt to Konen's drink. Although she states she's not responsible for finding the culprit, she confirms the act was intentional. Gaoshun leaves, and Maomao notices Jinshi wearing a mourning talisman. Jinshi explains Konen's importance to him and rewards Maomao with a gourd of alcohol for her assistance. After a brief discussion over an alcohol-themed bill, the scene shifts to a woman drowning. The palace doctor and Maomao are informed of the drowning incident. Maomao refuses to touch the body, citing her apothecary master's orders and her father's warning against touching dead bodies to avoid grave robbing. Jinshi, Gaoshun, and Maomao return to Jinshi's quarters to discuss the incident. Maomao is uncertain if the maid's death was a suicide or murder. Contemplating the idea of death and fate, Maomao asks Jinshi if she could die by poison if necessary. Jinshi is puzzled by her question, and Maomao leaves. Reflecting on the maid's case, Maomao hears rumors linking the maid to the garden party poisoning incident and mentions a suicide note found at the scene, leading to the case being ruled a suicide. Meanwhile, Gaoshun informs Jinshi that they've identified the culprit behind the burnt arm case. He reveals that Feng Ming, the head lady-in-waiting for Lady Aduo, is the perpetrator. The episode closes with Jinshi pondering the situation further. Episode 10 starts with Maomao and Xiaolan discussing the suicide of Lady Aduo's servant. Xiaolan mentions rumors that Aduo might be replaced by a younger concubine due to her inability to produce children, a crucial requirement in the palace hierarchy. Maomao muses over whether Lady Lihua might face a similar fate if she fails to conceive. She shares leftovers from a tea party with Xiaolan and departs. Returning to the Jade Pavilion, Maomao finds preparations underway for a second tea party. Lady Lishu is attending this event, and Maomao observes the dynamics among the attendees. During the party, Maomao watches Lishu closely, suspecting that her servants may still be harassing her. When Gyokuyu serves Lishu honey-flavored tea, Lishu refuses to drink it, prompting gossip among her servants. Maomao covertly signals Gyokuyu that the tea is suspect, leading Gyokuyu to replace it with hot ginger tea. Later, Maomao encounters Jinshi, who brings up the topic of the alleged suicide in Aduo's pavilion. After sharing her thoughts, Jinshi assigns Maomao to assist the Garnet Pavilion with various tasks. Maomao visits Aduo's pavilion and interacts with its inhabitants, including Aduo and her head lady-in-waiting, Fengming. They are tasked with airing out books and other duties in a book room. While working, Maomao contemplates Fengming's possible involvement in the poisoning incident with Lishu. She considers Fengming's motives and history with honey. Maomao later spots Lishu at the Garnet Pavilion and reports her findings to Jinshi. Although she doesn't have conclusive evidence, Maomao suggests that Fengming could be the culprit. Jinshi rewards Maomao with honey, which she declines to eat directly from his fingers, making the situation awkward. Gyokuyu interrupts and reprimands Jinshi for his behavior before Maomao leaves to meet with Lishu. She questions Lishu about her avoidance of honey, despite its purported health benefits. Lishu's ladies-in-waiting criticize Maomao for probing too deeply, but Maomao brushes them off, suggesting they complain to Jinshi if they have issues. Afterward, Maomao takes a walk with Gaoshun and asks him about where she could find historical records of events in the rear palace. Gaoshun takes her to the court library, where Maomao learns more about the relationships and histories of the palace inhabitants, including the current emperor and Aduo's connections. She also discovers that Dr. Luomen, her adoptive father, was involved in helping Aduo give birth to her son. The episode closes with Maomao pondering the implications of her father's actions and their potential impact on the palace dynamics. Episode 11 starts with Maomao arriving at the Garnet Pavilion to deliver something to Lady Aduo. She meets Fengming and says she wants to talk. Maomao notices that Fengming has packed her things and asks when she plans to leave. Maomao tells Fengming that she knows Aduo is being ordered to leave to make room for a new high-ranking concubine. Maomao also knows Aduo can't have children and asks what happened when Aduo was trying to give birth. Maomao explains this matters to her because her father helped with Aduo's birth. She mentions Aduo's child's death and asks Fengming if she feels guilty for not taking care of the child while Aduo was sick. Maomao then questions the child's cause of death and argues against face powder being the reason. She shows Fengming a box with a flour and syrup inside, explaining that some flours and syrups can be harmful to children. Because of many mistakes, including those during Aduo's childbirth, Maomao's father, Luomen, was banished from the rear palace. Maomao says someone told Fengming early on about the poisonous flour, but Fengming hid this to prevent Aduo from finding out she was responsible for her child's death. Maomao reveals that Lishu informed Fengming about the poison. Lishu and Aduo had a strong connection, but when Lishu shared her experience with honey as a baby, Fengming forced Lishu out of the pavilion. Fearing her past mistakes would be revealed when Lishu became a concubine, Fengming poisoned Lishu's soup at the garden party. After hearing Maomao, Fengming admits how much she admires Aduo and feels guilty for taking her child away. Maomao gives Fengming an ultimatum for her crimes and then returns to her quarters. The next day, Maomao visits Jinshi to discuss Aduo and Fengming's fate. That night, Maomao sits on the rear palace wall. Aduo joins her, reflecting on everything that has happened. Aduo leaves, and Maomao does too, but trips and is saved by Jinshi. They share a somewhat intimate moment. The next morning, Maomao attends Aduo's departure. She gives Jinshi Aduo's concubine crown and notices they look alike, wondering if Jinshi was involved in the baby incident, but drops the thought when she sees Lishu running toward Aduo. The episode ends with Gaoshun giving Jinshi documents about Feng Ming's family and connections, and Jinshi looking at a note with Maomao's name on it. Episode 12 starts with Jinshi explaining what happened to Feng Ming's relatives after her execution. He says they were punished and had their wealth taken away. Jinshi has the names of everyone in Feng Ming's family and those connected to them. He also reveals that the people who kidnapped Maomao are linked to Feng Ming's family. Jinshi wonders if he should hide this information. By hiding it, Jinshi thinks he can keep Maomao in the rear palace. However, he's unsure if that's what Maomao wants. We then see Maomao and Xiaolin talking about a recent mass firing. People with ties to Feng Ming's family were dismissed because of their connections. Worried, Maomao confronts Jinshi about the mass firing. She asks what will happen to her. Jinshi gives her the document from Gaoshun, and she asks if she'll be fired due to her ties to Feng Ming's family. Jinshi doesn't give a clear answer, but asks what she wants. Maomao doesn't want to lose her good life at the Jade Pavilion, but also doesn't want to seem like she's begging. So, she tells Jinshi she's willing to do whatever he says and asks not to be fired. Sadly, Maomao loses her position and goes back to the pleasure district. Gaoshun sees that Jinshi is upset and realizes Jinshi didn't make Maomao stay because he didn't want to force her. Meanwhile, Maomao is being pampered by one of the 3 princesses of the Verdigris house. She plans to attend a nobility banquet with them. Maomao mentions she got a lot of money when she left the rear palace, which helped her avoid being sold off. At the banquet, we see a montage of the 3 princesses performing for the nobles while Maomao helps the nobles. She notices a sad-looking man and talks to him, discovering it's Jinshi. He asks why she left the palace and why she's dressed like a courtesan. Maomao says she's earning money and doesn't take personal customers. Jinshi asks if he can buy her, and Maomao thinks it might be good to work there again. Jinshi wonders why she quit, but Maomao reminds him that he fired her. She tells Jinshi that the only thing she doesn't like about her job is not being able to experiment with poison. Jinshi laughs, calling her desire to experiment with poison ridiculous. The two share a moderately intimate moment, and some people notice. After the 3 princesses question Maomao about Jinshi, we see Maomao working on something for Grams at the Verdigris house. Grams asks Maomao to look at a patient. Later, Maomao bathes and reflects on her time at the rear palace. Grams arrives, and they discuss Maomao's debt repayment plans and if she wants to return to the rear palace. At night, Maomao goes outside to think about her experiences. She wonders what life has in store for her and then goes inside her adoptive father's home. The next day, Jinshi and Gaoshun visit Grams. Jinshi gives Grams a briefcase full of money and presents Maomao with a strange plant. The episode ends with Maomao thinking Jinshi wants to buy her. Episode 13 starts with Jinshi meeting the emperor. Jinshi thinks about his role and skills. He plans to serve the emperor until he can decide his future. Meanwhile, Maimei gives Maomao makeup for her job. Perrin and Joka join Maimei in asking Maomao if she can attract more customers from her new workplace. Maomao leaves Verdigris house and heads to her father's home. On her way, Maomao reflects on her experiences. When she arrives, she tells Luomen she's unsure what to bring to the rear palace. Luomen advises her to leave behind her mortar, pestle, and notebook to avoid suspicion of poisoning, but suggests she might bring them later. Maomao ponders her life again while sleeping next to Luomen. In the morning, Maimei and the others say goodbye to Maomao. During the carriage ride, Maomao blames Jinshi for all the attention she's getting. They arrive at Jinshi's home, and Maomao is upset that she'll be working there instead of the rear palace. Gaoshun tells Maomao she can't go back to her old job because she was fired. Suiren, Jinshi's attendant, introduces herself to Maomao and shows her around the outer court. After settling into her room, Maomao meets with Suiren, Jinshi, and Gaoshun again. Jinshi tells her she won't be doing servant work anymore. Instead, he wants her to take the court lady exam. The next morning, Maomao visits Suiren and learns that Suiren likes to handle Jinshi's personal tasks alone. Maomao and Suiren visit Jinshi and Gaoshun, and Maomao notices Jinshi has his shirt open, showing his muscular physique. Seeing Jinshi's relaxed demeanor, Maomao understands why only Suiren and Gaoshun can enter his quarters. Jinshi offers Maomao a new room, but she wants one with a stable. Jinshi refuses to give her a stable. Gaoshun gives Maomao a detailed tour of the outer court, and Maomao hopes she can remember everything. After giving Maomao information about the outer court's director of waters, they find Suiren doing an important task. Suiren asks Maomao to deliver some charcoal to Jinshi's office. When Maomao delivers the charcoal, she notices the other court ladies are not happy with her. They confront Maomao and ask why she's so close to Jinshi. Maomao asks if the woman is jealous, and the woman slaps her. Realizing her mistake, Maomao offers the women more questions and answers. After showing a burn injury she gave herself, the women leave. Jinshi overhears the conversation and reminds Maomao to keep studying for the court lady exam. While studying, Maomao opens the box Jinshi gave her and Old Granny in episode 12. The next day, Maomao takes the exam, and Jinshi asks why she failed. Maomao responds by asking why he thought she'd pass. Eventually, Maomao becomes Jinshi's personal servant. While exploring the outer court, Maomao finds several plants and admires them. She ends up in a restricted area, and a court lady tells her she shouldn't be there. Maomao smells a strange scent that reminds her of the military, while a figure wearing a monocle watches her from a distance. The episode ends with two men meeting at night and exchanging a peculiar item. Episode 14 starts with a woman being led to her throne by several other women. Meanwhile, Gyokuyu is excited about Maomao's progress and shares her feelings with Hongniang. At the outer court, Suiren asks Maomao why she isn't doing her office duties. Maomao hurries to the office and finds Jinshi and Gaoshun there. Jinshi tells her about the Garnet Pavilion's new pure consort and says the palace officials want Maomao to teach all 4 concubines. Maomao gives Jinshi her invoice, gathers her teaching materials, and goes with him and Gaoshun to the teaching location. Many girls crowd around them, attracted to Jinshi. Jinshi tells them that only high-rank concubines can enter the pavilion. Maomao uses Jinshi's words to keep him from seeing her teaching equipment. Maomao then notices Gyokuyu, Lishu, and Ah Duo at the event and compliments the ladies-in-waiting with them. The new concubine, Lady Lulan, catches Maomao's eye. Maomao starts the lesson and gives the concubines their materials. Li Hua and Gyokuyo are interested in the lessons, while Lishu is startled and Lulan is not interested at all. Maomao catches Jinshi eavesdropping and tells him to ask the emperor about the lessons. At night, Maomao hears guards patrolling but decides not to get involved, worried about what Suiren would think. The scene shifts to the guards and introduces a monocle-wearing man named Lakan, who inspects a burned structure. Someone asks if he found anything, but he denies it, and we see the item he exchanged in the previous episode's cliffhanger. The next day, Maomao cleans Jinshi's office and sees him working hard. Gaoshun gives Maomao a coat, saying it's a gift from Jinshi. Maomao visits the plant garden again and sees Li Haku talking with another man. She greets Li Haku and explains that he fell in love with Perrin, one of the Verdigris house's big sisters, and is working harder for promotion. Maomao tells Li Haku about her new job, and he says he's investigating the burned structure incident. While Maomao investigates the area, she reflects on the palace's history. She finds the item Lacan exchanged, which is a smoking pipe, and connects it to her findings. She rushes to a nearby warehouse with Li Haku following. Maomao asks if she can use some items from the warehouse. Outside, Maomao builds something with help from Li Haku's friend and warns Li Haku to stand back because it will explode. Li Haku ignores her and gets minor injuries. Maomao explains what caused the explosion and tells Li Haku to inform the warehouse workers to prevent future accidents. Back in her quarters, Maomao examines the smoking pipe and wonders how a warehouseman got such a rare item. She plans to clean it and examine it further later. The episode ends with a wealthy-looking man sulking in a dining house. Episode 15 starts with a few men gossiping about Lihaku's investigation of the burned warehouse. Lacan overhears them and wants more information. Meanwhile, Gaoshan gives Maomao a scroll about a past case involving a raw pufferfish dish. He mentions that a former colleague, Lacan, told him about a recent similar incident where a bureaucrat ate raw pufferfish and fell into a coma. Gaoshan explains that the cooks in both cases claimed they didn't use pufferfish, but the victims were affected because they loved eating exotic meals, particularly pufferfish. Gaoshan finds it strange since both men were experienced in eating such meals. Maomao asks Gaoshan to gather more information so she can solve the case. Jinshi arrives and disrupts Maomao's thoughts, but she leaves before they can discuss further, much to Jinshi's disappointment. The next day, Gaoshan gives Maomao the cook's notebook, which lists all the meals the victim received. Jinshi interrupts her again, so she decides to share the case details with him. While Suiren pampers Jinshi, Maomao asks Gaoshan about the timing of the incident. It happened a week ago, and Maomao guesses the cook used winter vegetables and seaweed, which Gaoshan confirms. Maomao asks to visit the cook's kitchen and meets a man named Basen. They go to the bureaucrat's mansion, and Basen instructs Maomao to follow his orders. In the kitchen, a man questions their presence, but Basen convinces him to let them investigate. They learn from a worker that the man is the master's younger brother. Maomao finds a pot of seaweed, which the servant assures is non-poisonous and a favorite dish of the master. The younger brother asks them to leave, but Maomao secretly takes some seaweed. Maomao shows Basen the seaweed, suspecting it came from the south. She needs to confirm its origin. Later, Maomao presents 2 seaweed dishes to several men, including Jinshi. Basen confirms that the seaweed is the southern-grown type, but not from winter. Maomao theorizes that the merchant, knowing the bureaucrat's preference, had locals prepare a dish with salted seaweed, a less common southern dish. Maomao explains that the crucial question is who suggested the trader bring the seaweed. The next day, Gaoshan reveals that the master's younger brother was behind the pufferfish incident and how he learned about the seaweed's poison. In her quarters, Maomao is upset that she didn't get to taste the poisonous seaweed, but cheers up when she remembers a gift from Jinshi. Jinshi, startled by Maomao's mood change, hits his head on the wall. Suiren tends to him, and Jinshi complains about a high military official who's been a family friend for years. Maomao advises him to stop dwelling on it. While sweeping, Maomao senses something bad is about to happen. Lacan arrives in Jinshi's office, and Jinshi accuses him of being upset because he chose Maomao as his servant. Lacan talks about a former courtesan from Verdigris house he wanted to buy but didn't. He regrets not forcing himself on her and hints at a nefarious act, but doesn't elaborate. Lacan asks if Maomao can investigate a mystery involving a secret technique developed by his former metalworker colleague. Jinshi agrees if Lacan provides more details. The episode ends with Maomao noticing it's raining more than usual. Episode 16 begins with Jinshi telling Maomao about a case involving a secret technique of a deceased metalworker. Lacan wants Maomao to solve this mystery. Jinshi gives Maomao a document with the address of the metalworker's sons and mentions their father's final message about a tea party. Maomao realizes Basen will be accompanying her. They are escorted to the workshop by the youngest brother and meet the 2 older brothers. Maomao investigates the workshop and its objects, identifying the eldest brother and noticing a strange mark on one of the items. Before she can examine it further, the eldest brother questions her ability to solve the case. Basen insists they need more details. The brothers reiterate what is already known and show the gifts their father left them, sharing their frustrations with these gifts. Maomao senses tension between the brothers. Their mother arrives, asking them to stop arguing, and serves tea. Maomao develops a theory involving sunlight and the second brother's chest. She examines the keyhole of the second brother's chest and suspects something is lodged inside. After asking more questions, Maomao considers the youngest brother's fishbowl and if it was ever placed on a marked shelf. The brother confirms it once housed an old pet goldfish and was indeed on the shelf. Maomao fills the fishbowl with water and aligns it to reflect sunlight onto the chest's keyhole. The second brother unlocks the drawer and finds a box containing another key. Maomao deduces the father's plan and uses the key to unlock the remaining drawers, revealing several minerals. She realizes the father's intent and knows the youngest brother does too. The two older brothers are clueless about their father's intentions, but the youngest brother explains their father wanted them to work together. The older brothers dismiss this, believing their father favored the youngest. The youngest son shares his father's remarks, proving he cared for them equally. Before leaving, Maomao advises the youngest brother to visit Luomen if he feels unwell. In Jinshi's office, Lakan and Jinshi discuss the case. Lakan shares the brothers' plans, and Jinshi asks for more details about Lakan's courtesan story. Lakan suggests Jinshi direct his questions elsewhere and leaves. Later, Jinshi and Maomao meet, and the episode ends with Jinshi asking Maomao if she can do his makeup. Episode 17 starts with Jinshi asking Maomao to apply makeup on his face. He questions Maomao about the makeup she uses to create fake freckles. Maomao shares her knowledge, and Jinshi says he wants to look like a completely different person. Maomao says she can make the concoction overnight, and we see her working on it. The next morning, she goes to Jinshi's quarters, where Suiren is pampering him. Maomao notices Jinshi's expensive incense and tells him it will make him stand out. She tells Gaoshun to get Jinshi some unwashed clothes. Maomao applies things to Jinshi's hair to make it look more like a commoner's. When Gaoshun brings back smelly clothes, Maomao tells Jinshi to change. She notices his muscular build and tells Suiren and Gaoshun to help make him look obese. Maomao tries putting feminine makeup on Jinshi, but he ends up looking beautiful. She then applies makeup to make him look poor and grotesque. Maomao gives Jinshi something to irritate his voice and cotton balls to change his face's shape. Before leaving, Gaoshun tells her that Jinshi is heading in her direction and asks her to accompany him so he doesn't draw suspicion. Maomao initially refuses, but Suiren offers her a disguise. During the carriage ride, Jinshi asks Maomao to call him Jinka and compliments her appearance. Gaoshun leaves them, and Jinshi and Maomao go for a walk. Jinshi says he plans to visit a restaurant to meet an acquaintance. Basen is seen observing them from afar, hired as their bodyguard. Maomao shows interest in buying vegetables, but Jinshi says fashionable people don't buy groceries. Maomao thinks about her father, and Jinshi gets upset that she isn't talking to him. Maomao buys chicken skewers for them to eat. Meanwhile, Gaoshun finds Suiren applying persimmon tannin to a suitcase. They discuss toys, with Suiren implying that Maomao is Jinshi's latest favorite. Gaoshun says Jinshi shouldn't stay attached to one possession for too long. Back with Jinshi and Maomao, Jinshi feels she's rushing to part ways. Jinshi talks about palace life, and Maomao mentions her worry about her adoptive father Luomen's health. Jinshi is surprised, thinking Maomao only cared about medicine and poison. Maomao explains Luomen's apothecary expertise and confirms he is a eunuch, a title given by the dowager. They arrive at the inn and restaurant Jinshi wanted to visit, and Maomao realizes why he needed a disguise. Jinshi asks about Verdigris House's customers, but Maomao can't disclose details due to confidentiality. Jinshi then asks how to lower a courtesan's value. Maomao reluctantly explains that a courtesan's value depends on their purity, and impregnating one would reduce it to 0. Jinshi is shocked by this information. The episode ends with a shot of Jinshi and Maomao looking at each other. Episode 18 opens with Maomao explaining to Jinshi that impregnating a courtesan lowers her value. After their talk, Maomao departs, and Jinshi goes into the building he intended to visit. Maomao later has a nightmare about a man trying to stab her as an infant, waking up disturbed. Luomen sends Maomao to the Verdigris house for an errand. Perrin greets her there, and Maomao slips away during a brief argument between Perrin and old Granny. Maomao heads to the annex to visit a sick woman, reflecting on her worsening condition and the temporary relief from her father's medicine. A worker tells old Granny about the arrival of their regular male customers, and she instructs a male worker to inform Maymay. Maomao reflects on the fate of courtesans who contract illnesses like syphilis. She remarks on the usual fate of courtesans who can no longer generate profit and finds the case particularly interesting. A girl warns Maomao to avoid Lacan, a peculiar regular at the verdigris house. Maomao sees the courtesan placing pebbles on her bed, finding her actions odd. Maymay arrives and tells Maomao that Lacan has left. They go for a walk, discussing Lacan, old Granny, and verdigris house principles. Maymay talks about aging and her desire to continue working as a courtesan, leading Maomao to ponder the abandonment of romantic feelings. Later, Jinshi and Gaoshan meet Maomao and give her a souvenir to deliver to Suiren. Maomao agrees and returns to work. Suiren suggests Maomao ask Jinshi if she can use one of his vacant rooms for her plants, but Maomao hesitates. They discuss nobles, commoners, and missed opportunities. Suiren sends Maomao to collect medicine from an establishment, where she encounters Suire. Jinshi and Gaoshan discuss Maomao's connection to Luomen, his past work, and his eunuch status. Lacan arrives, wanting to continue the courtesan discussion with Jinshi. He accuses Jinshi of stealing his prize and demands it back, revealing he is Maomao's true father. Jinshi tells Maomao about Lacan's request to meet her, but Maomao reacts negatively. Jinshi promises to refuse Lacan's demands. Maomao then finds a plant garden and starts fangirling over it. Suire reassures Maomao she won't get in trouble. They discuss the garden's significance and Suire's permission to plant there. The episode closes with a shot of the outer pavilion. Episode 19 begins with Gaoshan discussing scheduled events with Jinshi, who is distracted by Maomao's reaction to the news about Lacan. Gaoshan advises him to stay focused. Meanwhile, Maomao is approached by Li Haku, who informs her about a theft incident involving ceremonial tools in a nearby warehouse. Li Haku explains that the tools were poorly guarded due to the manager's food poisoning, a scenario reminiscent of a past case involving Master Kunin. He also mentions a smoking pipe linked to a tall court lady smelling of medicine, piquing Maomao's interest and leading her to suspect Suire's involvement. Jinshi observes them from a distance, and Maomao follows him to his office. In Jinshi's office, Maomao shares Li Haku's information. They discuss whether these events are traps or coincidences. Jinshi, noticing Maomao's lack of enthusiasm, offers her an ox bezoar, a rare medicinal cow gallstone, as motivation to work on the new case. Maomao researches at the archival building and discovers the poisoned official is connected to the Board of Rights. A gentleman informs her about the structural concerns of the altar of the sapphire sky. Maomao realizes the metal parts holding the pillars could fail catastrophically and suspects the involvement of 3 brothers from a previous case. Learning of an upcoming ceremony, Maomao rushes to the altar of the sapphire sky, but is stopped by a guard. Desperate, she accuses the guard of tampering with the altar, leading to a confrontation where the guard strikes her. Despite her injury, Maomao persists until Lacan intervenes, allowing her through. Inside, Maomao saves a noble from a collapsing pillar, sustaining an injury. She discovers the noble is Jinshi and asks for the ox bezoar, but Jinshi is more concerned about her well-being. Maomao loses consciousness in Jinshi's lap, and he carries her out, ending the episode with a close-up of his worried expression. Episode 20 begins with Maomao waking up, noticing she's bandaged. Suiren enters, explaining why Maomao is in Jinshi's quarters and hands her some tea. Suiren then escorts Maomao to a meeting with Jinshi, Gaoshun, and Basen. Jinshi asks Maomao why she went to the ceremony and how she knew the pillar would fall. Maomao explains her suspicions and how previous cases are connected, detailing the ceremonial items theft and a metalsmith's potential involvement. She believes the metalsmith was unaware of the commissioner's true intentions, only fulfilling a request. Maomao and Jinshi discuss the metalsmith's fate, and Maomao ponders why Jinshi attended the event, wondering what would have happened if the culprit's plan had succeeded. She briefly considers Suirei's involvement. Later, Suiren tells Maomao that Lihaku wants to speak with her. Lihaku informs Maomao about an investigation revealing Suirei's involvement and her death by poison. He shares the physician's autopsy report, which concluded that Suirei consumed poison. Despite this, Maomao is skeptical that Suirei acted alone. Back at work, Maomao contemplates Suirei's true nature. She navigates to Jinshi's room at night, asking him to escort her to the morgue to speak with the physician who conducted Suirei's autopsy. At the morgue, Maomao questions the physician about the poison used. Maomao points out nail marks in an empty coffin, indicating where the dead Suirei was kept. She explains how Suirei and an accomplice pulled off the body switch. Maomao expresses a desire to meet Suirei again and learn about the resurrection medicine recipe. Meanwhile, Jinshi reflects on Suirei's case in his room. Gaoshan updates Jinshi on Maomao's health, and they discuss Lacan's ties to Maomao and Gaoshan's family, including finding a wife for Basen. Gaoshan suggests Jinshi find a lover too. Jinshi and Gaoshan visit Luolan, noting that although the emperor will meet her, he may not be interested due to her affiliation with a chief vassal closely tied to Empress Dowager. They confirm the emperor's disinterest in Lishu. Later, they visit Lady Gyokuyu and learn about her bleeding issues. Jinshi leaves and instructs Maomao to go to the rear palace. Maomao anticipates her return to the rear palace, speculating Gyokuyu might be pregnant. The episode ends with Lihaku at the verdigris house, eavesdropping on a conversation about someone buying out one of the verdigris house's 3 princesses. Episode 21 of the Apothecary Diaries begins with Maomao visiting Gwen, the quack doctor. She persuades Gwen to help her tidy up the pharmacy. After taking a break to eat, Maomao finds it odd that Gwen serves food on paper but is impressed by its strength. Gwen explains that his family used to profit from selling this paper, but the previous emperor's mother's tree-cutting ban caused their business to decline. The next day, Maomao returns to help Gwen clean. Gwen gives her documents and informs her that his family will no longer be the palace purveyor. Maomao understands the disappointment for Gwen's family and examines the document's material, noting its lack of strength. She asks Gwen about his family's unchanged paper-making process. Gwen reveals that while the process is typical, his family has a unique ingredient crushing and glue crafting technique that remains a secret. Maomao prepares some arrowroot gruel for Gwen and gives him advice. Gwen mentions he will contact his sister soon. Maomao leaves and is informed that Lihaku wants to meet with her. Lihaku asks Maomao about the cost to buy out a courtesan, specifically Perrin. Maomao estimates that it would require a wealthy merchant or high-ranking official and at least 10,000 silver in cash. Lihaku is taken aback and asks about the likelihood of Perrin refusing his offer. Maomao asks Lihaku to strip to his undergarments to see if his body type appeals to Perrin. Before Lihaku finishes, Jinshi walks in, surprised by the situation. Jinshi questions Maomao, who tells him she was assessing Lihaku, aggravating Jinshi. Jinshi, sulking over Maomao's remarks, asks for her opinion on Lihaku's appearance. Maomao responds, and Jinshi is surprised by her ability to identify people's personalities by their looks. Meanwhile, Lihaku does sit-ups in his room, feeling he's wasting time and should find ways to buy out Perrin. Jinshi summons Lihaku to a meeting and offers him 20,000 silver to buy out Perrin. Jinshi and Lihaku discuss Lihaku's past and achievements. Lihaku values Jinshi's praise but prefers to earn the money himself, rather than use someone else's cash to buy Perrin. Jinshi leaves, assuring Gaoshan that there's nothing to worry about. Lihaku plans to win Perrin over by writing to her and impressing her during the next training regime. After a brief montage focusing on Lihaku and Perrin, we cut to Maomao in her room, reflecting on a past courtesan buyer scenario. Then, a man informs Lacan about an upcoming meeting. The episode ends with Lacan mentioning blue roses. Episode 22 begins with Maomao confirming Lady Gyokuyu's pregnancy. Gyokuyu's daughter asks Maomao to draw a picture, but a worker redirects her to draw a normal flower instead. Lacan visits Jinshi and Gaoshun, expressing his interest in blue roses. Jinshi doubts their existence but asks Gaoshun to gather information. Gaoshun later informs Jinshi that blue roses are out of season. Jinshi asks Maomao if she can get blue roses by the next month's garden party. Maomao says it's impossible but notices something odd about Jinshi's behavior. Maomao suspects Lacan's involvement and agrees to try, hoping to harm him. She requests some things from Jinshi and heads to Lady Lihua's place to use her steam room. In the steam room, she explains her plan to grow blue roses to Jinshi and Gaoshun. Despite her leg injury causing her pain, she continues her work, with Xiaolan offering help. A montage shows people bringing in over 100 potted roses. Maomao explains the process of growing blue roses. Gaoshun brings food, and while monitoring the roses, they find a bug, which Xiaolan removes. Maomao works tirelessly, refusing to sleep. Xiaolan suggests rest, but Maomao insists on staying. Maomao tells Gyokuyu she finished her poison testing and will return to the Crystal Pavilion for the blue roses. Hongniang mentions Gyokuyu won't attend the garden party, likely to keep her pregnancy secret. Xiaolan informs Maomao that one of the blue roses has a bud, giving her hope. At the garden party, Jinshi presents several roses, including blue ones, to the emperor. Some officials scoff, and Jinshi senses their disapproval. He's wary of Luolan's father, Shishu, and Lacan. Xinghua advises Maomao to avoid the Crystal Pavilion. Maomao admits to Jinshi that she couldn't make the blue roses fully bloom and reveals they dyed the roses from the inside, informing the emperor beforehand. After discussing her manicure with Jinshi, Maomao asks Gaoshun for an item she requested, believing her plan is in motion. The episode ends with Lacan encountering Maomao, Jinshi, and Gaoshun, and Maomao giving Lacan a blank stare. Episode 23 begins with Maomao challenging Lacan to a series of games. If one of them wins 3 times, they win the overall challenge. Lacan says that if he wins, Maomao must leave the palace and live with him. Maomao agrees, but says she will only move in with him after her contract ends. If Maomao wins, Lacan must buy out one of the elderly courtesans from the verdigris house. Maomao adds a deadly poison to several cups of water. After each match, the winner chooses a cup, and the loser must drink from it. If anyone quits the game, they automatically lose. Lacan wins the first 2 matches, making Jinshi worry about Maomao. Lacan lets Maomao win the 3rd match because he doesn't want her to drink poisoned water. Lacan drinks from a cup and seems fine at first, but then collapses. Maomao tells Jinshi that the drink was just strong medicine. Gaoshun checks Lacan and says he is just drunk, recalling Lacan's love for fruit juice. Maomao asks them to take Lacan to a brothel to get a flower. A flashback shows Lacan's childhood, where he struggled to tell people apart and had a rough relationship with his father. His uncle was the only one who understood him and taught him to see people as chess pieces. As an adult, Lacan led a squadron thanks to his family's influence and enjoyed using people like chess pieces. His first experience of seeing color was with the courtesan Fengxian at the verdigris house. Lacan often played Go and chess with Fengxian, and they grew close. Fengxian was a popular courtesan who refused many offers, raising her price. Lacan planned to see her again in 3 months, but she was bought out before he could return. After studying abroad for 3 years, Lacan found 2 fingers in a bag among letters from Fengxian. When he returned to the verdigris house, the old granny scolded him for abandoning Fengxian. In the present, Lacan wakes up and is told by Maomao that a servant brought him there. He reminisces about his past games and drinks something Maomao made for him, initially finding it disgusting, but then tolerable. Maomao gives Lacan a box containing a blue, withered rose which retains its shape. The episode ends with Maomao riding in a carriage, removing a blue rosebud from her cloak and looking at it. Episode 24 begins with Lacan observing the withered rose Maomao left for him, reflecting on his desire to be with Maomao despite understanding her dislike for him. He plans to fulfill his promise to her and expresses disdain for a man who touched Maomao during their match. Old Granny greets Lacan and invites him to choose one of the available courtesans. Lacan inquires if he can choose one of the 3 princesses, and Old Granny agrees for a price. Lacan opts for Maomao, who laughs and takes pride in her work, inviting him to choose well. Lacan hears Fengxian's voice and rushes to her location. Lacan, teary-eyed, is told by Old Granny to leave the area for the sick. Ignoring her, Lacan approaches Fengxian, declaring his intention to buy her. He gives her game pieces and challenges her to a round of Go. Maomao and Basin spot Luolan and her father nearby. Maomao wishes Basin wouldn't speak ill of high-ranking officials, as it reflects poorly on her. Visiting Jinxi's quarters, Maomao discusses Lacan with Jinxi, revealing her complex feelings towards him and speculating about Fengxian's influence over Lacan. Maomao reflects on Lacan's face blindness and his attachment to her. Maomao tells Jinxi she dislikes but doesn't hate Lacan, feeling grateful to be Luomen's daughter. She explains Lacan's role in her ceremony-stopping incident, acknowledging his gut-driven actions. Gaoshan advises Maomao that no father wants to be disliked. A few days later, Maomao receives a package from Maomao, including a letter and a gorgeous shawl. Remembering Mei's request to dance when purchased, Maomao dons a beautiful dress and dances by the outer wall. Jinxi startles her, saving her from a fall. Jinxi explains that a guard reported Maomao climbing the wall. Maomao explains the tradition of dancing when a courtesan is purchased. Jinxi reveals Lacan bought a courtesan and will take a 10-day vacation. Maomao deflects Jinxi's question about who Lacan purchased, commenting on the courtesan's short-lived beauty. Maomao reflects on her relationship with the sickly woman, confirming her past nightmares' reality and her satisfaction with being Luomen's daughter. She explains to Jinxi about fingertip regeneration, surprising him. Maomao's leg wound reopens, and Jinxi shows concern. Despite her high pain tolerance, Jinxi insists on helping her. Maomao tries to stitch her wound, but Jinxi intervenes, recalling past care. Maomao asks Jinxi for the ox Bazor, leading to a playful headbutt from Jinxi. The two walk off together. The next day, Maomao marvels at Jinxi's gift at the Jade Pavilion. Jinxi arrives with a new mission for Maomao, which she finds appealing. The episode closes with the narrator hinting at more of Maomao's shenanigans, and the studio confirming a second season of the Apothecary Diaries.